Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Geez, it's hot. I wonder if it's hot where you are. I just wanted to say hi, and we're going to do a quick conversation because I don't know about you all. Hello, Lauren, and anyone else who's joining. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday, July 16th. I feel like summer is just going by way too fast. The reason why I wanted to do this Instagram Live is I don't know about you all, but I'm getting kind of concerned about some of this COVID news and what's happening with vaccinated people, with non-vaccinated communities. So my friend Catt Sadler, who's 46, she's a podcast host and an entertainment reporter. She was vaccinated with the Moderna vaccine in May, and she got COVID. And she has been talking about it on her Instagram. So I reached out to her, I DM'd her, and I said, hey, Catt, do you want to do this? I said, but I also wanted to have a medical expert. So I also invited Dr. Jeremy Faust to join us. He is an ER doctor at Harvard, Brigham and Women's Hospital. And he ran a daily, hi everybody, a daily COVID briefing. So this is kind of selfish for me because I really wanted to kind of understand what is going on. California has just reinstated an indoor mask mandate. So anyway, let me see about Catt. Oh, here she is. Here's Catt. And then I think I let Jeremy in at the same time. I've never done a three-way, LOL. Oh, my friend Pat Shifke's here. Hi, Pat. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put a request, and hopefully she'll come on, and then I'll get Jeremy to join. Again, I've never done a three-way Instagram Live, everybody. So there you are, Catt.
Hello.
Hi. Listen, first and foremost, how are you feeling? How are you doing?
Well, I'm coming to you from bed. As you can see, this might be your first IG Live, coming to somebody from bed. But today is the best I've felt. Honestly, this is the highlight of my week here speaking with you and everybody that's watching. But I'm okay. I'm starting to feel human again. I'm on day 8 as we speak. I have a little congestion still. I've lost my my sense of smell and taste, but the fever is gone, and I'm sitting up. I mean, I haven't, it's been like the flu where you're in bed, you're knocked out, and you have very little energy. So I've just been very fatigued, but I'm okay, and I'm alive, and I'm not coming to you live from Cedar Sinai, which is, good.
Well, obviously, I mean, thank goodness, and we're so glad to hear it. But I mean, you had a rough time, Catt. You were quite sick. Someone asked about your Moderna shots. Catt had both Moderna shots. She was vaccinated, fully vaccinated in May, and then ended up getting very sick. I kind of hesitated about doing this IG Live because the last thing we want to do is discourage people from getting vaccinated by saying, well, she got it anyway. And we don't want to do that. And that's one of the reasons I asked Jeremy to join us as well. Let me just check for Jeremy. And hey, Julia, Julia works with me. Hi, Olivia Munn. Julia works with me, and she can make sure that Jeremy's on here. And
I'm glad that you wanted to bring him, because at the same time, I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to put misinformation out there either. I can only tell my story.
Which is very responsible. But let's just talk about how you got this, Catt. I mean, understand your son got COVID, and you were taking care of him.
Mm-hmm.
You were wearing a mask, and you were being quite careful, washing your hands, but you were in close contact with him. I guess the question I have to ask, Catt, is your son is 20, and was there a reason why he wasn't vaccinated?
Oh boy, Katie, I wish you could sit down and have a conversation with my son, because the reason is it's his personal choice. And as much information as I've put in front of him, he has at this moment chosen to not get vaccinated. I still think there's a glimmer of hope. I still think he might come to the other side. I will say he is one of those people, since he's been little, he hates needles. He hates vaccinations anyways. He's one of those kids who just faints at the doctor's office. So the minute he heard there was a vaccine for this thing, he was like, no, I'll just take my chances, and trust me, I'm sure like many mothers, because I've spoken with a lot of my followers and whatnot, mothers who say, I have the same issue with some of my grown kids. They're just really resisting. I think that demographic in particular is very skeptical and cynical of this vaccine. But he's holding out. So he's just been skeptical. And then, then he gets sick. And, it's not like I want to say I told you so, but of course that was going through my mind. Like, I just really wish he would have been vaccinated, because I think perhaps he may not have gotten it. However, here I am vaccinated, and now I'm sick with COVID. So
yeah, and look, Jeremy Faust just joined us. Hi, Jeremy. So good to see you. Jeremy is awesome, Catt. He and I talked a lot during the pandemic. He, as I mentioned to people who are just joining us, he's an ER doctor at Harvard and Brigham and Women's Hospital, and he did this daily COVID briefing. I guess he's still doing it, and Boston and Massachusetts in general has a very high vaccination rate. But ask you, Jeremy, first of all, thank you for doing this. But Catt was vaccinated, and she got the Moderna vaccine. And I think for a lot of people who were vaccinated, they're starting to get a little concerned, not to mention we'll deal with the unvaccinated people in a minute. But these are called breakout cases, I understand. Can you tell us kind of how Catt got this, despite the fact that she was vaccinated?
Sure. Good to see you. And hi, Catt. I'm glad you're feeling.
Jeremy, hi.
I was sort of in and out of the conversation trying to troubleshoot. So, yeah, I mean, I think that this is sort of.
Want me to tell you real quickly, Catt's what happened to Catt real quickly?
Yeah, I kind of know, but should we?
In 15 seconds, Catt's son, 20-year-old son, was not vaccinated. He got sick. She was taking care of him. She was wearing a mask, really taking a lot of precautions. And she got the Moderna vaccine and was fully vaccinated by May. And she got quite a severe case of COVID-19. She's been bedridden for about 8 days. She had, she was completely congested, not to get gross, but she had like pus coming out of her eyes. She had a fever, migraine. She could barely take a bath without having to crawl back into bed. I mean, she had a really serious case, and it was the Delta variant. You know this, Catt?
Well, I love Dr. Jeremy's opinion, because my doctor, I asked him, point blank, like, how do we know? And his response was that the medical community at this time are basically assuming that their vaccinated patients with COVID have the Delta variant because of its level of contagiousness, and how, because it is so aggressive, that there's almost just a collective assumption. But unless I get tested specifically, we wouldn't know that for sure. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I don't think anyone's doing a lot of testing about this, but it's just the assumption. It's the safe assumption. This is a very, very contagious variant. And fortunately, it's not a variant that we think causes worse disease. It's just a variant that causes a lot of disease quickly. It gives people less time to make the right decision. So if they're sitting around and waiting about, well, I'll get the vaccine, I'm not, and Delta's coming, it just really makes it so your indecision kind of catches up with you sooner. So everything that I heard, and by the way, Catt, I read your blog. I thought that was so well written. I was like, can I just reach out and say public health, like communications A+, like everything in your blog, it was perfect, because I want to go through what you said. All the things, you do everything right and you still come down with COVID-19. But at the same time, you're not in the hospital, which is number one. You're not going to have long-lasting effects, we don't think, from this. And basically, who knows what your case would have been like had you not had antibodies ready to go. So you were vaccinated twice. Your body has an abundance of anti-spike antibodies. You get a big old hunk of Delta thrown at you. And it's actually a fair fight now. You can actually have a battle and win it. And it sucks while you're having that battle. And the loss of taste and smell is like, wow, it's in there, it's happening. Mm-hmm. So only imagine what would have happened if you hadn't been vaccinated. And we're seeing this play out all over the world. That all the cases are, so Katie, you're always right. So I always say always right, Katie. But her case is not severe. It's a big pain in the ass, her case. It sucks. Her case sounds miserable.
Yeah, it's sort of semantics, but she felt like shit. Let's just put it.
Yeah, and I don't want to interrupt, but I think where the disconnect is that Katie, to your whole point, that's at first I was just so shocked because I was like, what? I'm vaccinated. What? I mean, even though I did have an extreme circumstance of taking care of someone with COVID, so I was exposed more than the average person. But I just feel like there are so many people out there who, you know, feel like they did the right thing. They got fully vaccinated, but they're walking around almost with this false sense of security that I'm wearing this almost invisible superhero cape. I can't get it. I can't touch it. Or if I do, it might be asymptomatic. And I think that's where, you know, doctor, I defer to you again. It's like the information just needs to be clear. We need to remind people that, yes, you can still get sick from this, even with the vaccination, but the vaccination is still working. It's still doing its job, which is why I would go and get vaccinated all over again, even as bad as I've felt in the last 5 days.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that when we think about what's considered a mild, a moderate, or a severe critical case, the line in the sand in terms of the medical definitions has to do with hypoxia, low oxygen, and needing oxygen, needing medication like the steroids or the ones that we now know help a little bit. But you can actually have fever, body aches. You can feel like you got hit by a truck. You can have the loss of smell. And all that is still, from the very beginning, been in the mild category if you look at the definitions. So mild sounds mild. It's not. It's awful. But it's not go to the hospital because you need hospital level care. And that to me is the whole point. And this is what your blog was so perfect in saying. Like, we would not have a global pandemic worth shutting everything down for and doing all this if people felt coming for a week. It would just be, oh my God, avoid that thing. That's awful. I don't want to miss work. I don't want to lose my smell for a while. But it wouldn't be killing people, and at least not at the same rate. So when I read all this, everything you wrote, I was like, yes, this is exactly what we would expect in a small number of cases. But a year ago, I mean, goodness, you would have been in a tougher spot, you know, and that's scary to think about.
But let's talk it. Let me get some sort of try to boil some of these things down, Jeremy. You know, the team I work with, specifically Julia, who did a great job kind of giving me the latest research, said cases are like up to 20,000 a day, when last month they were only 11,000. So we're not trending in the right direction. Is this because of breakthrough infections, the kinds of things that Catt experienced, or is it because of many of these states with very low vaccination compliance and this very highly contagious relatively new Delta variant?
Yeah, no, the reason the numbers are going up is really, there's a pie chart, right? But the biggest slice of the pie by far is that now that there are no mask mandates, people who are not vaccinated aren't getting any protection at all.
Right.
So most of the cases that we're reading about, that sort of awful curve you see going up on your screens, right? Most of those are in people who a couple months ago had to wear masks everywhere they went, or they had to get tested more often. And now it's like, oh, it's the vaccine era, there's no mask mandate. And they actually say, look, if you aren't vaccinated, you ought to still wear a mask. But who's checking, right? No one, we all have our little cards, right? But no one's carding you. Like, it's not like that. And so the people who never really wanted to do that to begin with are kind of feeling like they can just walk around without their masks. And then there is a small subset of folks who, did everything right, and yet Delta can hit you. So I think that it's probably really one of these things where the people who have not gotten vaccinated are now acting like they have, and they're kind of out there, and our numbers are spiking because of that.
It's very frustrating, Catt. I'm sure you feel this way. You talked about it with your son, that so many people are refusing to get vaccinated. It's become a proxy for your kind of, in some ways, your political ideology. And I want to make a correction. It's 28,000 a day from 11,000, roughly 28,000 a day from 11,000 last month. I have so many things to ask you, and Catt, I want you to feel free to jump in here and ask Jeremy things as well. But California has reinstated its mask mandate. I mean, even for states that haven't, because there are so many people, you don't really know when you're going to a store or going to, pick up a prescription, or even to a restaurant. You don't know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't. I don't even know if they're still taking temperatures when people walk into restaurants. Do you think that it's smart to just wear a mask now if you're inside, given these climbing numbers?
Okay, I live in Massachusetts. We have high vaccination rates. We have low case rates. when people come into my apartment or my house and I know they're vaccinated, I'm not wearing a mask. I'll just be very honest.
I'm talking about public
But
places.
when you go into public, it's like, to me, it's low hanging fruit. Like so my wife and I, we went to dinner, you take your mask off, you eat. But I'll tell you, when I went to the bathroom, I put the mask on, and I didn't regret it for a second, because we should always think about that. Isn't it lovely not to have to go to public restrooms and not have to smell that? I mean, that's just a wonderful innovation without COVID. But that's the place where like people are in and out. Lots of, people are probably sneezing and blowing their nose or whatever. That's like a small little space. So whenever I get into a public situation, I'm throwing the mask on partially just out of etiquette, right? Like, no one knows what's going on. Like, what's the downside of you getting the Lyft, the Uber, the cab, or wherever? And partly because, and there's a possibility that I could pick up, a symptomatic but not dangerous case. I don't feel like getting laid out like Catt is. Like, that sounds terrible. Like, I was like, oh my God, it sounds like she's just really suffering, right? And nobody wants that.
I feel like right now it's just the thing we have to do. I mean, and I mean, good for Massachusetts and where you guys are at, but I know it's much, much worse in what would you say, most places are much worse.
Well, California's got it's like 10 times as many cases as we do right now per day. And it's like going up, right? So to my mind of looking at this is any place where you have cases going up and hospitalizations are starting to catch up with that, then you throw the mask back on. That's how I feel, and it's the mask, it's sort of like it's like, great, if we do everything right, we can take the mask off. But if we don't, it's put it back on, because, some people there are going to be a few people, even vaccinated, who are going to have rough cases. Obviously it's like 95% less, but it's not 100% less. And that's what we're going for.
And Jeremy, we haven't reached herd immunity, which is what percentage of the population is vaccinated to achieve herd immunity?
All right, so that's like a moving target. I think that the thing with herd immunity is it actually really depends on the disease, right? Like, if you have a disease that's like not all that contagious, then you can actually have relatively few people vaccinated and the case counts go down and pretty soon it dies out. But if you have a virus like Delta coronavirus, like, you don't need that many sort of targets, because it'll find them, right? You walk into a room and you sneeze and they'll find the two people who don't have enough antibodies. Whereas if it's not a very contagious virus, you can have a lower level of the population protected, and it's just less likely. So I don't think we have a number. What I'll tell you is, looking at my data sets tell me that, like, you got to get like way over half the population vaccinated, way over. And, then the question is, are we looking at age groups? It's a moving target. Look, every place in the country that got to like near the 70% and higher has not had excess mortality lately. That's great news. That tells me that we're on the right track. And the only way out of this is vaccines. I don't know if we're ever going to get quote unquote herd immunity, but
right.
But I think we're going to get to a place where dying from this, for most serious disease, is actually optional. Not for everybody. There's some people who can't get it, the vaccine.
I mean, about the unvaccinated though, because trust me, I mean, I shared my story quickly in an Instagram post, and I mean, it caught fire, and namely from the anti-vaxxer community who were up in arms over my comments. And how do we, there's a certain population will never change their minds, right? But these people that are out there watching that maybe are undecided, or they're just reluctant, or they're lazy, or, who are these other unvaccinated people, and how do we get them to the other side to get vaccinated so that we can all together recover from this thing finally once and for all? I mean, is that even a possibility? Or, what do we do?
All right, so it's the answer is there's a lot of things we can do. And I'll be optimistic, right? A year ago, if you polled the United States and said, will you get vaccinated against coronavirus, the numbers were very low across the spectrum. People just didn't know what to make of the fact that it was so fast and it was a newer technology. And every time we saw a poll, it got better and better and better. And then we saw the places that really had a good rollout and deaths just disappeared and more people got interested. And so I think to some extent, the sort of word of mouth of like, oh, look, I got the vaccine and like no one in my community is really sick anymore, that's been a huge boon. The problem is with Delta, people, they're going to hear, if you have 1% of a million, that's 10,000 people walking around with an infection, right? So 1% breakthrough is 10,000 people who are all kidding. I got a case and I was breakthrough. It's like, yeah, well, 99% didn't, and that's the point. So we have to always play this PR game. But the really tricky thing is that vaccine hesitancy or deliberation, whatever you want to call it, it has a million flavors, right? There's some that's like, oh, well, we have like, if you're in the African American community, there's like a hesitancy about, you know, things that haven't been tested well enough, or like Tuskegee, for crying out loud. Like, there's like a really good reason to be kind of hesitant about this stuff. On the other hand, if you're, you know, a rural Republican white voter, which is actually one of the hardest groups to reach right now, they have a very different reason for hesitancy, and actually might be harder to reach them because, you know, it's just getting through the idea of it sort of being a political identity. That's actually a lot harder than having a conversation with somebody you trust, right? So if you're someone who's not sure, you have a talk with your primary care doctor or someone else who got the vaccine. But if you're like actually out there and you're sort of, you've bought into the politicization of this, it's hard to reach. So actually, I'll be honest, the White House task force is studying this, and they've asked a bunch of us to help. And what we're learning is every little thing is going to make a small difference, or it's like a game of inches. So I think that's where we're headed. We're heading towards, like, every day another person gets vaccinated. You can't unvaccinate somebody, so we're always heading in the right direction. So I don't know what the magic number is, but every day we get a little closer.
I wish Fox News would talk about it more, because they have a big audience of, and I think that some of their anchors, I don't, you know, I haven't really watched it recently, but I feel like some of the people could be more compelling in really talking about why this is so important, particularly with the Delta variant kind of spiking, and with states like Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, and Nevada, they have very, very low vaccination rates. And I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, you know, Catt got pretty sick. No, not severe, maybe, that requires hospitalization, whatever the vernacular is. But have we learned more about why COVID seems to really impact some people more than others? And some people, Catt has no pre-existing condition. She was vaccinated, you know, and I'm just curious, are we learning about the subset of people who are really hit hard and get extremely sick and you know, and tragically even die from this?
I don't think we've learned a ton since last time you and I spoke about this. I think that basically it's anyone who's sort of at risk of being sick for any reason is just a little bit more likely to get hit hard by this. I think that the things we've seen, the most sort of signal have been things like diabetes. Things like blood type was really bandied about. That's actually ended up to be really in the margins. I'm sure it makes some tiny, you know, difference in the very end. But quite frankly, I think, you know, just age and some comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, those seem to be the things. I think that we will learn about that.
Sorry, that would be my dog.
They can get COVID, by the way.
Right on cue. They can get it. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that. I'm
They cannot
ask any more about that.
They can't. You can't mask your dog, but I don't think they get too sick. Is what I've heard. So yeah, Katie, I don't think we know, and I think that's something where we're still doing a lot of research.
Someone did ask a question. Sorry, but someone did ask a question in the comments, and it is actually a good question in that they said, how sick did her son get? Because he was the unvaccinated one. He is 20 years old. My son is completely healthy. He actually, I would describe his illness as doubly worse than mine. You know, he was in bed for a solid 8 days, and he had the fever, and he couldn't even lift his head up. So it does seem like, because like I was telling Katie earlier, I am turning a corner. I feel human today. I expect to be up and at 'em maybe by Sunday and re-entering life as it was. But I look at his illness, and he was really down and out. Now he's on day 14, and now he will start to come out of that. He's going to be fine too, thank goodness. But he was unvaccinated. He does seem to have been harder hit than even I with the vaccine, for what that's worth, you know.
And is he going to get vaccinated now? Does he feel like, or does he feel this false sense of security that I've had it? And Jeremy, should he be vaccinated? Does it give him any immunity from COVID-19 having gotten it?
Yes, he should be vaccinated. Not yet, but he should wait a little time and then be vaccinated. The antibody levels after natural infection certainly provide a lot of protection. There's no question that, you know, second cases are rare, but they happen. But when when research was done to look at people who had previously had the virus and then compared to people who had just gotten a dose or two of the vaccines, the antibody response after the vaccine is much, much better. And also we think, we're learning this, wanes more slowly. In other words, stays higher longer. And that's not surprising to me because that vaccine packs a punch, right? I mean, it's, I had the man flu when I got the vaccine. I was like really down for a couple of days and my body was busy making those antibodies and also generating other immune responses. So yeah, the answer is he should be vaccinated at some point. Because it'll get him even more protection than he got just now.
I'm working on him, Katie. I'm working on him.
Well, and what about booster shots? I know, didn't Pfizer announce that we're going to need booster shots? Can you just, and people are saying, one person, like, stop with the fear mongering. This isn't fear mongering. This is giving you all the information you need to take care of your health. And I think it's a public service for Catt and Jeremy to do this. So, Jeremy, what about this booster situation?
Yeah, the booster situation is really interesting because this is a moment where I think for the first time during the pandemic, there's a little bit of a divide between what the pharmaceutical company is saying and what most of the public health experts that I talk to and trust are thinking. And that is that we think that a booster might at some point be necessary, but we don't think it's necessary now, or we haven't seen data to make us think that. And there's really two kinds of data. There's sort of patient level data, like how sick did you get? Did you go to the hospital? Was there a fatal outcome? And then there's what we call these proxy or surrogate data points, which are things like your antibody levels. Now, oftentimes those things go together, right? But they don't always. And so what we're told is that Pfizer's saying that the booster would raise the antibody levels because the levels are falling. But most of us who've looked at this, we feel that a lower antibody level by itself doesn't necessarily mean you're back to the same risk you were before. So we want to see a correlation. So if they tell me, okay, now, 10 months, your antibody levels are 10% of what they used to be. I need to now know that the people with those levels were actually getting hospitalized because of reinfection. If it turns out that 10% is good enough and they're staying out of the hospital, then who cares? It's just a number, right? It's like if you're in 3 feet of water, you're not drowning. If you're in 4 feet of water, you're not drowning. For me, if you're in 6 feet of water, you're drowning, right? And so the question is, where's the water level? And just because it goes from 4 feet to 2 feet or 4 feet to 5 feet, we're fine. So that's kind of where we're at. But I think that we are waiting to see if there's any real correlation between those antibody levels and outcomes that we all care about, such as how sick do you get.
And Catt, do you have any other questions you want to? Oh, someone asked how long would when getting vaccinated and getting sick. We mentioned earlier that Catt got her vaccines completed, both shots in May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, so
a good 6 to 8 weeks before I got sick. And I had been out, in public prior to getting sick, kind of like everybody else, still kind of following the rules and wearing masks when establishments asked for it. I would put it on, but if they didn't, I wasn't always. And that's, I think, what will change for me. LA has just changed the rules anyways, so now everyone's going to be wearing masks indoors in public spaces, but we weren't for a while. And I elected to not because I was vaccinated, and I will definitely wear my mask indoors now moving forward. I do have a question, and I will tell you just after sharing my story and hearing from so many other people who have had COVID, vaccinated or unvaccinated, and the one kind of lingering long haul symptom is this whole loss of taste and smell. And it sounds kind of minor compared to the extreme cases we've seen, but people are living with this now. And so I'm going to kind of make it my mission to try and find ways to help people get their smell and taste back. And how can we do that? And do you have any advice? I have reached out with some homeopathic doctors and I'm trying to get as much information I can on this subject, but does anything come to mind for you, doctor? Because that's one ailment that really does stick with people even after they've gotten over their COVID.
Yeah, no, it's one of those really, it's hard to imagine until you have it, right?
Yeah.
how just disruptive that is, right? And what essentially
Yeah.
lives. I don't have an answer. I think that
Life, it really affects your quality of life.
I had friends, like dear friends, send me ice cream to the house and it's just sitting in the freezer because I was like, well, I'd rather just have the soup because that's good for me. At least I'll save the ice cream so I can actually enjoy it, right? I mean, it does nothing right now. I mean, absolutely. I've been like sticking my nose and I've been having my son bring like spices next to my bed. I'm trying to like awaken my olfactory system, but
well, what happens taste spicy stuff, because there's anosmia, which is loss of smell, and then there's dysgeusia, which is the loss of taste. And they're actually, we tend to think of them as overlapping, but they're actually not completely overlapping. So things that are actually spicy are actually almost all taste and not smell. Whereas a lot of things that we rely on that we think are really tasty are actually, a lot of it's aromatic. So have you had just a spicy taste?
I can't taste or smell.
Okay.
Nothing works for me.
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
nothing.
Terrible. Sorry. I think that the number one thing that we all know is time, and that most of these cases do resolve on their own. The second thing is, just in general, we've all actually had this before. We've all had the experience of how little you taste when you have a cold.
Right.
So we kind of have a sense of that. So my basic thing is just, not getting another cold on top of it, just kind of the typical get healthy. It sounds like you're going to throw that mask on anyway, so you're going to be. In terms of any treatments, I'm not aware of anything, and I would be wary of anyone who says that we know a lot. We just don't know. So
A lot of people have had them returned. It just has taken time, right?
Yes, that's right. Most people, I think. And again, I kind of do trust the body to heal itself. We can sort of pathologize and make things, but you know what? Our body is amazing. We regenerate in in just incredible ways. It just blows my mind. And so my hope and my guess is that that'll happen for you too. But I haven't heard anything specific.
There do seem to be there's a lot on the internet right now. I haven't put any of them to the test, so I won't share them now, but my plan is to attempt some of those and I'll share the results. There are these TikTok hacks right now where you burn an orange on an open flame and then you add sugar and it's a whole thing, and lemon. It's meant to kind of just wake up the whole range of all of your olfactory nervous system, I guess, but I don't know. I've been a little busy getting well.
Who knows?
I'm a skeptic, but you know what? The more important thing is, like, you do what you feel is helping you move forward and getting better, as long as it's safe. I mean, just that's the number one.
Right.
Well, I think this was really helpful. I mean, the bottom line is, and I guess I just want to end by saying to both of you, is there convincing people to get vaccinated? A lot of people, not a lot, but a few people in this conversation have said, it's a personal choice. And it really is actually, a collective choice, isn't it? And what is the best approach to try to encourage people to actually get vaccinated when there's so many people who just flat out refuse? And I think there are some that are still persuadable. What do you think is the best approach? And I think I'd like to ask both of you, because Catt, you tried with your son.
I tried, but to your point, I said exactly what you're saying. It is a personal choice, and people get to decide for themselves and their families at the end of the day, but keyword, and their families and their communities. And that's what I said to my son when he got sick. I said, you have to remember, this doesn't just affect you. Now look at me, look at your mom. I've been out of work for 4 days. Now I'm in bed. That was before I was even sick. I was saying to him, your choices really do have an effect on those around you. It's not just about you. So I would ask people to remember that when they're making up their minds, if they have religious beliefs or if they have these long held beliefs. And, what's out there, Katie, though, is so disturbing. The information, the things I've learned that are out there that I had no idea, the belief systems in place about, just the crazy conspiracy theories about, population control and what's actually in the vaccine. And why would I do that to myself and my family? These people resisting, who claim it is their personal choice, in their minds, based on whatever it is they've been read or fed or ingesting, think that they're doing the right thing, I believe. I mean, they think that, this is all one big conspiracy and this is the government's, way to control us all. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling. So I don't know how you get people to drink the healthy Kool-Aid of trust the science. I don't know how you get them there if they just flat out refuse. You can put it in front of them, you can lead a horse to water, but I don't know how you make them drink it.
Maybe, I talked to someone in their, the people in their building in the city, they were paid to get vaccinated. For those who didn't want to, they actually were paid a stipend or whatever you want to call it to get the vaccine. What do you think, Jeremy? Is there anything else that you have found actually with some of your patients that works?
Yeah, I've had some success, and I think that there's a couple of things. Number one, it's I need everyone to understand this. It's not vaccinate or nothing. It's vaccinate or eventually get coronavirus. Those are the two choices, because this is such a contagious virus. And the dangers around vaccination are very, very small, if any. And the dangers around COVID for all ages, we know, is extraordinary. Obviously, it's better to be 20 than 80, but as we just heard, it doesn't sound fun. So it's really, keep in mind that it's coming for you, and when it does, you'll want antibodies on board to fight that, to make it a fair fight. That's number one. The second thing I want to say is that we in the health professions, we just want people to be healthy, and I want to come from a place of just like, not about control, not about telling you what to do, but just a matter of actually just caring about people and saying, look, there's such a simple thing you can do right now. It's unusual that you can do something for yourself and the community. Like, usually it's like kind of like selfish versus me versus everyone else. This is something you do for yourself and for others, and I think we package that as like a good deed. I think that, but one thing I do want to say is that I think that, Catt, you look so good right now for someone who's been through everything. But, I kind of want people to get this, to be doing Instas when they're feeling really crappy. And the reason I say that is that I can't film my patients. I can't show you when they're about to die, and I actually put them into a coma on a breathing machine. I'm not allowed to show that. Mm-hmm. When I've had friends who've gotten real sick, I said, take video, show everyone what this is, because that's what we want to show people, what they're avoiding. And because, I don't care how good you look, no one looks good with this virus when they're febrile and, feeling like crap. So, and I think that when people see it and it's real, then they might have a better balancing than they're getting right now.
You know what I thought would be effective, you guys, if in some of these low vaccine communities, if people could give testimonials after they were sick and what they went through and how they wish they had gotten a vaccine, or people who had sadly lost a loved one and they regret not getting vaccinated. I think those kind of personal testimonials, sadly, you wish that didn't have to happen. But I think having some doubters and skeptics who have then become true believers in science and the efficacy of this vaccine, and stating their regrets and their wishes that they had gotten them, I think that might be very effective. So I don't know if anybody's out there who'd be willing to do that, but I think all of us have to do our part to try to encourage this.
Well, I've got some antibodies now, Katie. Let's work together. Send me out there. I'll go. I mean, I'm not going to get it anytime soon. I'll go. I'll go to the ER and record some of this stuff for the people that are willing to. I mean, when was the last time we actually are seeing inside of these hospitals? Because that's the other thing with the vaccine, because the resistance, and what I'm seeing in the comments also is, but why would I get it? I still get sick. Look at you. You're sick. The point is, again, the vaccine keeps us from being hospitalized or dying. So when these people, well, I mean, that could get really morbid, I suppose, but I understand what you're saying, Katie. And I think that you're right. The rawness, the realness, the validity of this, people read online and they just read the statistics and the numbers. They don't even compute anymore. It's the reality of the situation that might wake some people up.
That is like so key. I was like, it's like, a year ago, the patients I was seeing we're all so damn sick, all the time. Yeah, we have some mild asymptomatic ones here, you have some moderate, and then you had some really severe ones. Now when I see people coming in and they have an asymptomatic case, we picked it up on the way to their colonoscopy or whatever it was going to be, or a mild case, even a breakthrough case. I admitted one patient with a breakthrough. It's just nothing in comparison to what we saw a year ago. I mean, I'll never forget it, seeing these patients and looking at what their x-rays and CAT scans look like. I wish people could see that, because the difference between a breakthrough case and an unprotected case is just night and day.
And I think the head of the CDC, Jeremy, said something today where she, I'm just trying to find it in my notes that Julia pointed out to me. She basically said that this has now become a pandemic for the unvaccinated. I'm trying to get her exact quote, which I can't.
Yeah, and
Al Walensky, director of the CDC, warned that this is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We should point out that cases like cats are while we're hearing about them, they're not happening that often, and people who have these breakout cases are often asymptomatic, PS, where they're testing positive for COVID. But the fact of the matter is, hospitalizations and cases are below last winter's peak level, but we're seeing an uptick not only through breakthrough infections, but mostly through unvaccinated people who are no longer wearing masks. They're not washing their hands as much. They're out and about. And that's why vaccines are so important. That's just my last.
Katie, thank you for taking the time to do this, and it's just too important, and it's very urgent. I feel a real sense of urgency right now with this Delta, that like people are just confused out there. Nobody knows what to do, and people are, I hate to use the word scared, but people are. My phone's been blowing up with, oh man, this scares me, and it isn't that we want to scare people. It's just the more information people have, the more they know how to do the right thing.
We can't let down our guard, and we have to urge people to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jeremy, so great to see you, and Catt, I'm so glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Thank you again for taking the time to do this. And I'm going to post this on my Instagram page so people who had more fun things to do time and the interest in doing so. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to you both. Lots of love. Bye, everybody.
Good weekend. Bye, everybody.